Permanent National Electoral Commission has been in the news mostly because of the recent appointment into some of its key positions, even as the election management body repositions ahead of the 2023 general election. One of those eye-popping appointments was that of a Buhari administration official whose usually rapid defense and attack of both the president and the ruling party had been beyond question. But while the commission is on the reorganization assignment, it also continues to deal with house-clearing matters that emerged from recent elections across the country, including prosecution of some university professors who are accused of corruption and other acts to undermine the electoral process. We shall have a conversation on this. Joining us now with Mike Igini, a lawyer and current resident INEC Electoral Commissioner for Akwa Ibom State in South Nigeria. It's a pleasure having you, Mike, today on the show. Right. Meddling into Edo elections and some other issues, any updates on the libel suit over the accusation by Colonel Maso and John Mayaki over Edo elections? I just want to know that real quickly before we continue and go into other issues.
First, thank you very much for having me. With respect to the suits, with respect to those who recklessly have decided to think that lie-telling is now synonymous with sophistication. The matter is coming up on the 1st and the 2nd of next month, and I think that we're looking forward to see them come with truckload of evidence of those issues that they raised, clearly to throw deaths at my person. And so that will be coming up on the 1st and the 2nd. We're looking forward to see them. That's respect to that for now.
Well, very quickly, let me ask you about the arraignment of 2 university professors and the dismissal of INEC staff on the grounds of certain conduct on their part that was found irregular. Where are we with that? I know that the head of publicity, INEC Akwa Ibom, just issued a press release yesterday. But what are the exact details?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Abati. Well, in the build-up to the 2019 election, we were very clear to all stakeholders in Akwa Ibom State when I arrived. And I made the point very clear to them that under my leadership and watch, a continuation of our unwavering commitment to see that the vote of the people not only counts, but must be taken into account in determining who becomes what, that there will be electoral accountability in 2019. And I went around, I had meetings with all stakeholders. On account of what I know about Akwa Ibom State in terms of the history of the conduct of elections, I engaged all stakeholders, in particular staff. First, who are those who are going to help to implement the process. I had meetings with traditional rulers and all structure of society. I had meetings with them. And during the process of that preparation, because we are drawing university lecturers from the university around and the polytechnic, federal polytechnics, I pleaded with all of them that you are people of presumed integrity. The reason why the commission have decided to embrace you people is because of the fact that the past difficult elections we've had, when staff, ad hoc staff drawn from state civil service became a problem, and that as people of presumed integrity, respected individuals from the university, that the very best is expected from you people. I pleaded with everybody. I also have to caution. I found that there will be severe consequences for any and all who deviate from the highest ethical standards expected of them. But regrettably, a few of even our own staff, as well as these university lecturers, the rank of a professor, they clearly deviated from the path of honor. And as you know very well, those who desire the honor of a king must not break the law of the land. I had thought that on account of the fact that I said vote must count in the state, that credible election is what gives spice and piquancy to the practice of democracy. I thought we had a shared vision, a shared value, because naturally, when there's a shared value, there will be harmony of interests. And when there's a harmony of interests, it will reduce opportunistic behavior. Regrettably, they went outside the rules, and as reported, with respect to staff, we have to take out the staff first. We dealt with the staff who were also found wanting, and they have been dismissed. Similarly, with respect to the other lecturers in question, I can only talk about one that was just, the court have issued a bench warrant yesterday. But with respect to the first one that have been arraigned successfully last week, of course, you know that is now sub judice in the best practice of our tradition of our legal profession. We will not go into that. But clearly, as stated, it's unbelievable that despite the sustained engagement we had with these colleagues to do the right thing, the one yet to be arraigned, who is basically on the run.
Talking about Professor Ignatius Uduk.
Yes, correct. Who is basically on the run, because the other one already been arraigned, so he goes to the court to prove his innocence.
That's Professor Peter Ogban.
Correct.
Both of them collation and returning officers.
Absolutely.
Election.
Right. Now, Professor Uduk Ignatius, shortly after the election, in his own handwritten, not typed, handwritten report that's expected of every pool official to make when you are engaged in the job, he wrote to the commission that there was no election and that the results were given to him, and he left. Shortly afterwards, I had an invitation to South Africa election and to deliver a lecture in Malawi on credible elections. So I was out of the country. But while I was away, the committee I set up at the state level to inquire into what happened. Because if a professor who had been trained would tell the commission in his own handwriting that he was given a result collated for him to sign, he needs to tell us who gave him that result. So he was invited. He was evasive. I had to call on the ASU chairman that, look, we're having a problem. One of your colleagues, you need to brief us what happened during the election. Because it is from what happened that we need to plan for the future. And in any case, he has said something on his own handwritten report signed by him. And the ASU chairman called me back to say, look, the professor is saying that I will arrest him. I said, how would I arrest him? Look, as I speak to you, I'm not even in the country. Why would I arrest him? He possibly might have done something wrong. Eventually, he was escorted to the office by another colleague. Of course, he came to corroborate what he had said before. But in any case, who is the person that gave you that result? He was not forthcoming, and he left the office. By the time I returned back, all efforts since last year to get this guy have been very evasive. And of course, I wrote to the commission headquarters, and our chairman set up a committee for all issues that I have requested to be investigated under my jurisdiction. And a committee was set up. Unlike his other colleague and other lecturers who showed up, Professor Uduk refused to appear before the panel set up by the head office of the Independent National Electoral Commission to tell the commission who gave him those results that he collated. He refused to show up. But it's instructive to note here, and for the Nigerian people to see the kind of challenge that we are going through as a commission. The very Professor Uduk, who refused to honor, in fact, at some point, he wrote a letter to his lawyer threatening the commission that if we ever invite him again for any kind of debriefing, that he was going to take us to court. In fact, the one who started the idea of going to court. So he preferred to go to court rather than to just come administratively to attend to us, all right? And so, Professor Uduk, despite having written to the commission in his own handwriting that there was no election, and having not told us who gave him the result he signed, the same Uduk was driven in a tinted vehicle to the tribunal. Surprisingly, our own employee, under the circumstance, whether ad hoc, he went to the tribunal and stood as a witness against INEC in the tribunal and went to depose another affidavit again that there was election. So, of course, the tribunal went to the Court of Appeal and they lost completely. As we speak today, INEC is still spending money because after the Court of Appeal, which is the final court on that matter, he went to the regular court, Federal High Court. From Federal High Court, he has taken us now to, I'm talking about the recipient of what Uduk tried to do. This is where we are. And so, we now, after a thorough investigation and we have to go to court, we have gone to court. Now, to serve him the court process, it has been difficult. In fact, all the information we are getting from security that is not within Uyo anymore. So the question is, for how long will it run? Through subsidiary service, will serve the office of the Vice Chancellor. From the office of the Vice Chancellor, nothing happened because which was exercise patient. We've been waiting. And of course, yesterday, the court had to issue a bench warrant for his arrest. Unfortunately, he has complicated this matter because he should be well advised by his lawyer that a bench warrant for arrest is a very serious matter. Serious in the sense, legally, that for any reason, if he fails to show, in fact, as from today, anywhere he's seen in Nigeria, he will be arrested by the police. And regrettably, that's not the part we wanted. After all, his colleague, he came to the court, he took his plea, he was granted bail. We can't oppose bail. He has gone home. But here's the point I want to make here. And that is that for failure to show up, and if he fails to show up on the 9th, the implication is that anywhere he's seen, he will be arrested. And once you are arrested under a bench warrant, they are taking you straight to the prison. If for any reason, the next city will be April next year or March next year, well, it is only until that day.
Let the judge decide that.
I'm just telling the implication. I mean, this is implication of a bench warrant. Yes. We are not going to, mind you, the case of Ogban, we are not talking about that. It's sub judice. But we are talking about...
As briefly as possible, I mean, right. You've made a point about Professor Ogban, who altered results. Right. Professor Uduk, yes, who brought fake results given to him by undisclosed persons. Right. But some staff were dismissed. Correct. What did those INEC staff who were dismissed, what did they do? Did they aid and abet the two professors? Briefly, so that we can take another topic.
Not at all. The distinction between a pre-election offenses and election offenses. The offensive in relation to our own staff who have been dismissed had to do with registration exercise. You see, registration, the biometric register that we have today in this country, INEC has the most robust data of Nigerians. An attempt by staff, whether permanent or non-permanent, to try to mess up that process was the reason for the action taken by the Commission against those staff. Those are not action to aid the two professors in question. But in any case, this is not the first time we have done that. When I was in Cross River, we proceeded against those who tried to mess up the process because we have spent billions of public funds to have a biometric register for our country. And anybody try to do that must be dealt with. In Cross River, I proceeded against those who went to the hotel to try to do that, and it was in prison for 8 months.
Indeed.
This is not the first time.
Right, and the prosecution of electoral offences is part of what tends to let down the whole process, so we're glad to see this action being taken and taken to its logical conclusion. Now, you recently heavily criticized state governors using that evocative imagery, which reminded me of George Floyd, and you claimed that state governors have their knee on the necks of the electoral process. I'd like you to expand on that and tell us how we sustain democracy through credible elections.
Thank you very much. A credible election is a bedrock for the sustenance of democracy. Without credible election where votes are counted and taken into account, election becomes a mere ritual without choosing. And the foundation of any democracy with respect to elections should start at the level of the local government system. Regrettably, painfully, since after 1999, which was the last time that the Independent National Electoral Commission conducted local government elections across the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where different parties in existence at that time won different local governments. Since that time, what we have been seeing happening under the 1999 Constitution that has given power for INEC to conduct election is nothing but a mere facade, electoral facade, exercise, nothing but a mere coronation events. We have no democracy in the 774 local government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I have been on this before I came into INEC, and have remained on this path, and that those who are doing it, they know it themselves. Because, you know, I grew up at my very early age in the secondary school. We knew the importance of the local government election system. That those are the elections more important to the Nigerian people, because the majority of Nigerian people are domiciled in the local governments. But today, what we have, every state controlled by political party, in these charades, these coronation events, a mere facade for undemocratic behavior. It is the state in charge that wins all the election 100%. This is terrible. There are no elections. What you have is just an endorsement, a coronation. This is what I meant by the fact that today, it's not only the current sitting governors, successive governors had been doing this. Those who have done this, they are also now victims, because very many of the past governors who did this kind of thing, today, when they go back to their state, they cannot win a local government, despite having been a governor for 8 years. And so, it's shameful, and it's a painful reality that the Nigerian people, we have given up on the local government in Nigeria. There's no democracy at that level. Mind you, this is not to say that some of the people we find, our colleagues we find at the level of the INEC, that we don't have some of the finest, some of the best who could even do better than what we have achieved so far in the level of INEC. But the problem is that they are not free. When will they be granted freedom? There's no freedom there. Because a governor will determine when the election will take place. A governor will determine when ballot paper will be printed. In fact, the members of the INEC are clearly party members. And that should not happen at all. So the truth of the matter is that the pain that people like us at the level of INEC we have, is that our democracy, our election, all the effort we are making now have no foundation. Because it must start from the local government. And so those who do not understand what it means by the ballot, about people expressing, using the ballot as the best means of expression of the will of the people in a democracy, how do you expect them to graduate to INEC conducted the election and behave very well.
Okay,
this
Mike.
is the problem we are having in our elections.
Okay, Mike, I want us to draw comparisons now between the American system and Nigerian system. I mean, ideally, somebody would have thought that we should get to a point where the INEC can be so independent in the states to be able to organize gubernatorial elections in states like it applies in America. Another great comparison would be the fact that the state electoral body in America, all they do, they organize even up to presidential elections. The elections, people vote for the presidential candidate in states, and the only thing the federal electoral body does, that's the Electoral College, does is just to ratify those results when they meet and they have electors that can vote as regards, the number of votes they get. Those are Electoral College votes. When are we going to get that system right? To have sort of like a buoyancy of the institutions? Because I look forward for that day constitutionally when a INEC, for instance, in states, apart from local government elections, can conduct a gubernatorial election that can be adjudged free and fair.
Thank you. Well, you see, this is the tragedy of our country. Today, the definition of free, fair, and credible election, or what constitutes a free, fair, and credible election with respect to election conducted by INEC, is different from the definition by election conducted by INEC. Why should that be so? The US that you refer to, and I think that sometimes we shouldn't even compare ourselves with the US. We should just be concern ourselves with what lessons can we learn. I think obviously that's the point you are making. It's a fact that the US is a multi-system. It's a federal system of government, truly a federal system of government that is reflected as you have clearly described. Now, the states, the county boards are clearly responsible for elections. Today, we parade ourselves as commissioner and all of that. In the election that just conducted, did you see anybody parading himself as an electoral commissioner or whatever? It's not CNN and some other news outlet that announced those results. You see, it is a journey. You ask when. Let me say this here. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Because time itself time is neutral. A human being, group of people may decide to use time positively or negatively. Today, if we all decide as to the path we should go that we know that will help us, we will get there. Even though every civilization had a primitive past, it is not for us to begin to do the things that people have done before and they have got to where they are now. Why can't we just adopt the good things that we have seen work in other places? The US remains the arsenal of democracy. What you see playing out in the US is a clear reflection of strong institutional resilience against an individual and a group of his supporters trying to dismantle the American democratic heritage, a tradition that assumed the status of jus cogens, a peremptory norm of international law, behavior, or practice that the regulation is not easily permitted. And that's what we are seeing playing out in the US. Last week, journalists came to the office, and I decided to play the devil's advocate. And I said, all of us, we have so much to learn from what is going on in the US. The media, I will talk about that. My commission, politicians, judiciary, political parties, we have so much to learn. Because if you look at what is happening now in the US, you'll find that both the institution, in terms of the electoral management bodies, the judiciary, the media, they are standing up in defense of democracy and the rule of law in America. Now, how are they doing it? As I was telling you about the interaction and engagement I had with journalists, I said, assuming that in 2023, let me propose that the election we are going to conduct, each of the INEC we have in Nigeria we have to conduct the next presidential election. All of them reacted and said, no, 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 no. That's clearly a vote of no confidence on the SEC as they are today. Now in the US, you could see that regardless of the party in power, regardless of the party in control of that state, the vote of the American people, legally cast, counted, must be given expression as the best means of showing to the people that at every periodic regular election, the people of America who had earlier donated part of their sovereignty to a body of persons, they can come back to exercise their residual sovereignty to say, this is the person we have voted for. That is the beauty of it. Donald Trump has lost over 30 cases. But here's one interesting thing about what happened in the US. The media do not need to, all the allegations thrown up by Trump, the media on their own will investigate and they will take a position that what the president has said, what this have said is not correct, it has no evidence, nothing. They will report it because it is their belief that they have a duty to protect and preserve the democratic heritage of the American people, to keep the democracy ever young, to serve the American people. So really, we have a lot to learn from them. And you can see the role of parties in what they do. So I think that clearly there's so much to learn from what is happening in the US in terms of the behavior of the political class who are indeed in Nigeria the greatest threat to our democracy.
Well, very quickly, we have just about 2 minutes or less to go. After Olumide Akpata was sworn in as the 30th president of the NBA, one of the first things he did was to set up an election audit and reform committee to deal with some of the issues that arose from that election, about voters register and all of that. You've been talking about institutions. Would you like to comment as vice chairman of that election audit and reform committee on the work of that committee and how the NBA can be strengthened as an institution beyond the controversies over the last election?
Yes, thank you very much. We want to commend Olumide Akpata, our president of the NBA, for what he has done in line with what he has promised when eventually he was declared the winner. I can confirm the sincerity of what he has done because in the process leading to that election, I am one of those and several others that, and of course, it was even an open thing when he wrote a petition expressing concern about the processes and procedure. And that, in fact, it was almost a point where some people felt he should leave. But when he spoke to me, he said, look, Mike, I'm not going to leave this because I want to document what happened, if at all for anything, for the reform of the process. And somehow, the process turned out in a way that he had overwhelming victory. But that's not to overlook very serious issues that actually should be addressed with respect to issue about voter, because the voter register is the foundation of any credible election. And follow up to his promise, he set up the Electoral Reform and Audit Committee made up of having Ayo Akintunde SAN as our chairman, the 2 senior advocates and the 2 Wewe, and interestingly myself as the vice chairman and other members. And we have worked so hard, very well. We have called for memoranda, interestingly, or somehow funny enough, like expectation that the whole place would be full of memoranda. But we have received quite a number of that from members, and the interim report is almost ready. It is hoped that from what we are doing, we are very confident and sure that by the next election, we are not going to have the kind of issues that have dogged several elections that be conducted by the NBA. But what is important is that there have been initiative on the part of NBA, maybe because of the number of members and all that, to go by way of ICT to have a seamless process of voting, where we are also now having our problem. But we think that we overcome all of that, and that is the current effort going on the part of the leadership of the NBA. And so we are very hopeful that all of that will be sorted out, and the next NBA election is going to be very seamless on account of, I am a member of a subcommittee, and we have turned in our report, but the most important thing is the fact that the register has to be there too, because you cannot have election where names of people who are in Lagos will be found in Enugu and Enugu in Enugu. So I think that all will be well with our MBA, because an elite body like MBA that should represent the core value of our society should not be seen to be found wanting.
Yes, thank you very much, Mike Igini, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.